Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, a top 2% global podcast and one of California's top leadership shows. Each episode brings you real-world insights on burnout prevention, workplace culture, and leadership excellence. And now, here's your host, Michael D. Levitt.
Welcome back, Ryann Liebl. You're in rarefied air. Very few people get to be on the show more than once, and that's not because I'm rude or mean or anything like that. I love conversations with people. I mean, 1,000+ episodes, you'd think that I'd like talking with people, but I thought, you know what? Hey, there's a lot about you that we didn't even approach during the last conversation. So, how you been, Ryann?
I've been great. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to go a slightly different angle on this one, but I'm sure we'll bleed into other things because life is life. You know, there's experiences and things like that. So for those that didn't catch the last episode, which I will link in the show notes, so make sure you grab that. Why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into the conversation about Hollywood and acting and all that other fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. I'm a filmmaker. I'm also a content creator for Fortune 50 and 500 companies. So we do anything from company documentaries, graphic design work, all the way up to national and international ads and commercials.
Fun stuff. And it is. It's creative. And, you know, as I've gotten older, which you always get older, but as I've gotten older, I have a bigger appreciation to creativity. So my original career was in accounting. Not supposed to be creative with accounting. That's you get thrown in jail. You do stuff like that. So you don't want to do that. But as time goes on, you launch your own business. You start getting understanding of how things are in storytelling. And I think that's, what a big thing about it when you're working with a business, or if you're an actor and you're in a television show or a movie. It's storytelling, and it's bringing in the audience to make them feel like they're standing right next to you in the scene, and they get to feel it and experience. So, what got you interested in working in film? I'm curious about that.
Well, I grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up in kind of a rural background. I mean, we always went into town and into the major cities, Milwaukee, Chicago. We did a lot of traveling. We had friends that lived near New York City, so we would go, to big cities that way. But I was always around farmers and orchards and just a lot of space, right? And I could get outside and I could explore and I could use my imagination. And something that I kind of think about with kids nowadays, with screens constantly, like I didn't have that. So I really had the benefit of being able to get outside and explore and use my imagination and do whatever I wanted to do. And my friends were like that too. We would just make up stories. I did, set fires and create little shelters. And, I grew up in Wisconsin, so all the seasons, and I was always outside. And my parents, came from a generation where they would kick you out. They say, come back, when the sun goes down, please, but you didn't have a cell phone. You couldn't be found. And so you could really get into things. And I think in a really positive way. So I climbed trees and I explored, and that was my foundation. And then I always loved movies. My parents always watched movies and had movies, and we bought movies. So movies were a huge part of our life, and we would go also to the theater and the cinema and go see movies on the big screen. And I loved movies. They inspired me. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how it started. It was just like, I want to do that. I know I want to tell stories. I want to make people feel good. I want to uplift them. I want to be a part of that. And I want to reach a lot of people, and I want to help people. That was sort of what started it. And then my freshman year, I started acting. I got the chutzpah up enough to, audition for something, and I got it. And I literally never looked back. For me, it was just like, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's how it started. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fellow Midwesterner, grew up in suburbs of Detroit, and spent a lot of time outside playing with dirt and other things. And if you dared go in the house, before the sun was setting, they'd say, what do you gotta do? I gotta go to the bathroom. And being a boy, that's probably too much information. What do you gotta do to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta, number two. All right, make it quick. Or because if it was number one, it's like there's a tree in the backyard. It's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was like, and
Yeah.
my brother and I were actually joking about this the other day, and a lot of the younger generations get confused by this, and you remember this is like, it's in the news at 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? And of course, that was there was child abductions and things like that. But on the other side of it, there were a ton of parents that had no clue where we are. And the parents today, that traumatizes them of that thought. Where's Trevor? I haven't seen Trevor in the last 2 seconds. Where's Trevor? And the
Yeah.
kids are like, where's mom? Where's mom? Wait, it's like, so it's this interesting dynamic of our generation and younger generations when it come to, they didn't know where we were. They didn't care. That's
Yeah.
why Gen X is so feral. We're just,
Oh man, I feel so lucky, honestly. Like I feel so lucky that I grew up at the time that we did, like before the internet, but we also got the internet, so we're really smart about technology. Yet we can turn it off and we can go to this other world where it's not there and we're okay, right? We're not going to lose our little minds having to look at a screen. But yeah, man, I mean, my greatest memories are just like getting in my car and driving as far as I could drive and like finding some spot, right, with like a lookout and putting in my cassette tape in my car and just chilling out, right, and dreaming, and just freedom, that freedom of space and movement. And it's funny, like I think about my parents. I'm glad. I feel like it made us have to grow up quicker in a way, right? Because they trusted us, they knew we would get into things, but they trusted enough to know that like, okay, these guys are going to be okay. Right. And I feel like that's a big part of growing up, right? Is like get out and have your parents not worry about you. That's how you grow up. Because then you learn and you make mistakes and you do stupid things. And you get into things, but you grow up that way, So I feel very lucky.
yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. So, you apply to an audition for the role, you get it, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay,
Yeah.
now here, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
and you get involved in that, and you understand the nuances of it, and most people don't usually get the first audition. It's like, okay, here's this. And if they have good coaches and mentors and people in the industry, they'll share with them, okay, here's some things you could work on and you'll get better at that, and here's how you do it. And I think that's where, and I know, from my vantage point, there's just like in any sector, it doesn't have to be filmmaking or Hollywood or anything like that. There are great people that are supportive and helpful. There are people that aren't, and every degree in between. So, you know, coming, and of course I'm biased, but I think coming from a Midwestern background, and like your case, growing up in the country and still going to the city, that's like you get exposed to all worlds. There are
Yeah.
people that are always city kids that maybe once in a while might have gone out to the country, or they went to the state fair and saw a cow in person, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like it was thankfully, I grew up in the suburbs, but I had family members that had farms and always visited them and all that. So I got my exposure too. And just, I think when you have that, ability to kind of navigate through things, it gives you an element of discernment to be able to go, all right, this feels right. This doesn't feel right. And having that, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe self-worth, but more maybe self-understanding that, okay, yeah, I want to go in this role, but I'm not feeling it. There's something here, or I want this role so bad. I don't care who the director is. I don't care who the producers are. This is going to be something big for me. And I'm sure you ran into that both personally and just everybody in there. I'm just curious as to how do you guide people when it comes to something like that? Because I know they get the big stars in their eyes, and they want to make it big, and I want them to make it big. If you've got that in your heart, go for it. But sometimes I think they go into it and they're not really looking at the big picture. They're just kind of tunnel focused on one thing, and could be missing some opportunities otherwise. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, anything that you do in life, especially creatively, is a journey. There's a lot of barriers, especially in the creative fields. I mean, you get told no constantly. That's just sort of par for the course. And then you have a lot of vampire personalities who are in the artistic industry who sort of take advantage of artists and things like that. So it's a fascinating thing. I mean, you talk about that Midwest background and kind of being in all kinds of worlds. We traveled too, and I would see third world countries too. And I think that perspective is really important because I learned the value of hard work, I think, from a really young age, especially growing up in the country. You do physical work constantly, right? You're doing yard work or you're chopping down a tree. I mean, my parents made me mow the lawn. I loved doing it. I did it, but it was like, 8 acres of mowing the lawn, which took sometimes 5 to 6 hours to get it done in a day. So I grew up with a hard work ethic and the purpose of, I have a job to do and I have to get that job done. So I think when I did move to LA and I started to enter the Hollywood industry, and I think I like you were kind of saying, I had stars in my eyes. I thought it would be a lot simpler than it was, right? I thought, oh well, it's really simple. You just show up and you do a good job and you're going to get the role. And there were definitely times when that happened, but I didn't always look at it from the perspective of it's a business, and I think a lot of young people don't in general. Right? They look at the arts as like this, I don't know, this artistic endeavor, and they're just gonna love me and whatever it is, right? But really, it's a business like any other business, and you're part of this wheel that turns, and you're one of the spokes in the wheel, and you have to figure out how to deliver what people need and want, so you can be a part of that wheel, right? Part of that dynamic, part of that team. And I think what a lot of young creatives miss, especially if they're actors, is they think that they're God's gift, and they don't recognize that no, you're part of this team, and you have to fit with that team, and you have to be easy to get along with, and you have to be a team player, and you can't have a chip on your shoulder, and you can't have an attitude and all those things. I definitely think that Midwest background helped me with that. I was always very humble and very thankful. And I treated people really well because that's how I grew up. Um, I think it was a bit weird for LA people because I would stop and ask, if people needed help. And people would look at you like, what? What are you doing? Like, well, you just had a car crash. I'm here to help because that's how I grew up in Wisconsin. You're very much aware of your neighbors and your community. And so I brought that attitude with me, I'm I'm glad that I did, because a lot of the industry is pretty brutal and people don't treat each other very well, right? And they don't have that kind of kind, humble background. So it was this funny mix of, people from everywhere, in this melting pot of a world that had this, sole purpose of churning out television and film. Not so much a theater town. That's really much more New York and other places. But it was funny because I met a lot of Midwesterners right on sets, and we always got along. Like right away. Like we'd find out, like, oh, you're from Chicago? No way. And that was it, right? And it was just awesome. And there's just a through line there. So I think, for anybody who's sort of starting out, like just observe what you observe, right? And trust your instincts, and don't lose that part of you that makes you the best part of you, right? And that might mean that you have a very extroverted personality and you really like people, and so keep that. Don't let the no's, which come, usually hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's and lots of barriers, stop you from going after that thing that, makes you happy and that you feel like you should do.
Yeah, and I think too, and you kind of hinted at it there, is don't lose yourself It's a Eminem song. But, coming from Detroit, I didn't know I was going to be referencing Marshall Mathers today, but okay. But anyway, I see that, in a lot of industries or movies. And I remember I watched a movie a while ago and I don't remember what it was about, but basically there was a group of friends and they were all trying to get into the industry, and they, one of the friends, they said, well, don't sell yourself short, don't sell your soul to try to get this thing. And they ended up kind of doing that and damaged their friendships, damaged they weren't themselves anymore. And I tell people that be yourself, because that's what got you there. That's who you are. That's who we want to, as consumers, we want to see people on film and shows and all of that, who they are. Now, yes, I know they're acting, they're playing different roles and things like that, but I want people to be who they are.
Yeah. Real people.
Because and I'm not surprised that you got along with other Midwesterners. It's the Great Lakes water that we drank and swam in and fished in and anything else. It's just kind of it's in our DNA, so we just naturally go, okay, yeah, because there's that common ground there. Even you're in Wisconsin, I'm in Michigan, somewhere in Chicago, or we'll even talk to people in Ohio.
That's true,
kidding.
yeah.
I got
Iowa
friends
too.
in
Iowa
yeah,
too.
in Iowa,
Here we
yeah,
go in here.
yeah. What?
Baby.
Yeah, we'll throw it. And now, if you watch college football, you say Big Ten. It's like, wait a minute. It's like UCLA. What?
Yeah.
That's Los Angeles, right? Yeah, I recognize the jersey colors. It's that blue, and yeah, I go get like, Big Ten. I'm like, when we were kids during the dead of winter, we wanted to be in LA. But I don't, don't study college football alignment for geographical state, kids. You're going to fail miserably on your test. Don't do it. It used to be like Big Ten. Oh, yeah. Northwestern. Yep. There we go. Yeah. Wisconsin. Yeah. Congratulations to Indiana, for winning the national title. Nice of you to show up to the party. It's been a while, like ever, so good for them. But again, it's a lot of times people will forget the reason why they went into something. I see it all the time in dealing with people that are stressed or burned out at their jobs. And I said, I asked them, it's like, what was it like when you got that letter that said they wanted to hire you? What did you feel like? And they go, I was excited. Like,
Yeah.
okay. What happened? What happened? What's changed since then? And sometimes it's just, the environment is not the same that it was, or it wasn't what they thought it would be, or maybe life experiences and other things that are happening out in the world are impacting them and taking them away from rekindling that. And I see it too. I know people that were in the industry that left, and like, but that was your dream. What? And you have the permission to change your mind. It's called, you get issued this life. It's up to you to do what you want to do with it. But
Totally.
I'm curious as to, and I'm sure you've seen it with countless colleagues of yours. What you know when you see somebody and you've known them for a while, they went from, I wanted to be here, to I don't ever want to do this again. I'm sure, the bad players had a component of it maybe, but is there something else that maybe is it, it wasn't what they thought it would be, or are there some other things that you saw that were more common than not, and why people would exit, maybe not getting the roles that they wanted? I mean, there could be a lot of different things. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, there was always a similar through line to people who wanted to give up. And it usually, there was really like three things, honestly. It was that they had too many barriers and it wasn't happening in the time frame that they thought it was going to happen. They had people around them who were creating a lot of barriers, putting them down. Again, this vampire personality, it's very common, especially in the artistic fields. And so you have to be really careful about who you allow in your life. That's really, 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 really essential. And it's funny, there's just a lot of people who are kind of glib about that. And they're like, that friend who just always puts me down, but he kind of, they're very nonchalant about it, and they shouldn't be. You have to have really good people around you who are constantly cheerleading you and who really have your back, whether that's family, friends, coworkers, whoever you really engage with, because it's hard enough to make it happen. And so like you don't want that negativity around. And then I guess the third thing is that, yeah, it's kind of what you're saying. It's not always what people thought it was going to be. And I think also some people just go out integrity and they do things to make certain things happen. Um, and that also is something that not everybody can live with. There were a lot of times in LA, a young person. I mean, I went there when I was 18. I had a lot of opportunities that came up with celebrities or people who were known or some sort of big manager or producer. And it just didn't feel right to me. And I had to say no because I was like, I'm 20 years old. Why would I go hang out with somebody who's 55? You know what I mean? Why are they asking me to go out to a dinner and meet all these other people? And what's the motivation here? Right? Because if you really want to work with me, then call me in for a casting, right? Or ask me to send one of my scripts and read it and take the time to understand what I'm trying to do and then back it up. But don't make me come out with you. So there was a lot of things like that. And I think, men and women probably both deal with it, probably women more. And I think it happens to people. I think I have a friend of mine, she was telling this story at this big event. She's this speaker now, and she does these huge events with thousands and thousands of people. And she was talking about this particular studio head who really wanted to date her. And she said no. She didn't want to have anything to do with him. She wasn't interested. And he blacklisted her without her knowing. And she struggled for many, many years. And then finally, a few people who were honest enough came out and told her, just so you know, this is what was happening. He was calling around town and telling people lies about you, right? So things like that also happen. And she's an incredibly beautiful woman who was incredibly talented, like mind-blowingly talented. One of those people who could have been a huge movie star, right? And so things like that happen also. But again, I think that's in any industry, right? Where there's the stakes are high, right? And you can reach a lot of people. And, when you're an actor, you have that potential to reach millions and millions and millions of people, which means you can make people money. You have high influence, your voice matters, and you can reach people, right? So that's an interesting element, right? You have to have your integrity in, and you have to trust yourself. You have to know what you know. And that's an interesting thing. So I think it's those three things that make people go, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. But I think what I learned from the industry, and I had to really dig in and go, okay, why are certain people making it, right? They're making good material and they're making magical things happen. And also people that I worked with that I really liked. I'm like, what is it? What are they doing? A lot of those people were just doing their own thing. They were creating the material, writing it, producing it, going out and finding the financing, putting it all together, and then pushing it really hard to make a product out of it. And that is something that's very interesting to me. The top tier people who you hear about too from other people are just good people. I love this guy. He's amazing. I loved working with him. They're the one, they do it themselves. They're using the system to some degree, right? But they're driving it. And I think that's, if you really want to keep your integrity in a field like that, that's just so crazy competitive, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, we see it, and like we all know about the situation with a certain movie producer, director head, and all that kind of stuff that made life completely miserable for so many people. And where all of a sudden you see these actresses that were on top of their game, and all of a sudden they vanish, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody was like Rick Moranis, who decided, I lost my wife. I'm going to raise my kids. I'm going to step away from this. Cool. Everybody's choice is their choice. Celebrate people that make the family a priority. Beautiful for that, and looking forward to his movie with the Spaceball sequel. That should be really entertaining. They should. I know it's going to be entertaining. We're going to see how far they can push it, because what Mel was able to get away with, when we were younger,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's gonna. They they need to go.
I think we need to bring that kind of humor back no matter what.
Oh,
I mean, I
yeah,
think
I'm
now as the
with that.
five, if
Oh
there
yeah,
was for the time.
yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, yeah, I want to go, and it's like I really want to go. They actually went there. Okay, it's gonna be fun. But again, that there's an experience of I'm looking forward to. Not, I'm one of those people that new movies that are coming out. I I try to avoid watching trailers. I know that people are like, what? I was like, no,
Yeah.
because I want to experience. The last movie I did that with was James Gunn's Superman. I
Nice.
completely ignored it. The other time, the reason why I do that is in the 90s, I saw Pulp Fiction. I knew nothing about that movie. I went into it. Yeah, and my first wife and I would just like go in there. After the end of it, I'm like, I was entertained. That is amazing
Mind
because
blown. Yeah.
that movie was all
Yeah.
over the map, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to make sure I do that again. And years I'm like watching trailers and all that stuff. Now I'm like, nope. If there's a movie I really want to see, I'm like, I'm blinders on. It's like, oh, commercials coming in. La 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 la. I'm doing silly things. So like, my wife will look at me and go, it's like, there's a trailer on for this. Oh, okay.
I feel
I don't
like
know.
too though with trailers nowadays they show you the whole movie, and I'm like, I don't want to see the whole movie. Just show me the whole movie. Like I'll watch 2 seconds of it just to get a sense
Yeah.
in it, and then I don't watch it because
And
it's the whole movie.
yeah, that's my biggest complaint and why I don't like watching them too, because
Yeah.
and it used to be, and I don't know if it's the case now, but a lot of times if they show a lot of trailers and they show basically the whole movie, that tells me that the movie may not be that good. Where if they're like, if it's like here's a sliver, here's this, and because I don't want, I mean, if I want to save the $15 or whatever it is, okay, sure, I'll watch the trailer, but I don't, that takes away from the experience of it, and I think. But in closing, I've been wanting. I was going to ask you this. What was oh, I know. Throughout your acting Hollywood career and all of that kind of stuff, is there a particular moment that you look back and go, "I'm really, really happy that I chose this path"? I mean, and there could probably be countless ones, but is there a particular story or an experience that you had that you thought, "Okay, I am," and when I look back at my life or look at my life now, I'm like, that was something that is really, something that I enjoyed. It could be something that's pillar to everything else you do, but it could be something just simple as like, I loved working on that film with this person because it reconnected me to something. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many moments like that. I think for me, I started out I went to LA because I wanted to make movies. I chose not to go to New York and I chose not to do the theater thing. I went to LA to do movies. That was the purpose. Like I'm gonna act and then I'm gonna move behind the camera because I always knew I was a writer, and so I was gonna do that. I was gonna figure that out. I was gonna figure out how to make my own movies. And then be in movies, right? So there were so many moments, but there were really good actors that I worked with. I remember doing a project with John Travolta. It was for his Be Cool movie, and it was a big commercial for Heineken, which was, one of the sponsors or whatever for the film. And I got to finally meet him and just be on set with him, and I got to see how he operated. And he was so competent, right? Just so competent. He knew where to put the camera and the lighting, and he treated the crew really well, and he treated hair and makeup really well. And then he took the time to talk to me for like a half an hour, just like right there. Who are you? Oh my gosh, I'm so nice to meet you. What are you trying to do? What are your goals? Like just a really good guy. And it really just reiterated to me like, okay, the guys at the top, they know what they're doing and they're good people, right? They're competent and they're good people. And there's a reason why they are where they are. So that was a really amazing moment. And then when I started my own film production company, it was that moment, in 2019 where I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop just doing other people's projects and directing and producing other stuff. I'm going to do my stuff. And I finished the script and I got all that together, and then we shot that first movie, which was Mags and Julie Go on a Road Trip, and we shot that in Wisconsin. And it was this full circle moment, right, of like coming back to my home state and getting these local amazing talent on board and being in these places where I'd grown up and I had acted because, I did professional theater when I was in high school and highlighting all the beautiful things about Wisconsin. It was that really made me kind of go, okay, all of this heartache and all of this battle and all of these things that I went through to get to this moment, every single bit of it was worth it. And I learned so much when I was in LA and working with really good people and working on sets and working in the studios. It was that kind of that moment where it was like, all right, it was all worth it. And now that's what I'm always striving for is, that moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things that jumped out at me there, especially when you're talking about going back and filming that movie back home,
Yeah.
is and we have memories of home and where we're from and things like that. And then when you're filming a scene and it's got an element of that, that's got to be such a surreal and amazing sensation because you're seeing it differently. You're seeing it with your own viewpoint, but also seeing it in a new way. So when you have memories and you can also see them in a new way, in a newly created way, whether it's going back home or experiencing something or doing something you used to do, or occasionally when I'm back in Motown going to a Tigers game, I'm sitting in the stadium. It just, brings back some memories, or just, it could be just a memory driving down the road and a song comes on and you remember, whatever. That's the power of story. Not only the stories that we see and view, but the stories and the memories that we have and the ones that we cherish and how they will come back and entertain us and inform us and educate us. That's why I love the power of story. And whether it's, conversations like this or watching a movie or show or, just, sitting in the theater. The one thing I love about theaters, and this is not a plug for movie theaters and things like that, but one of the things I love about them is we put our identities away and we just are there. We're immersed in it. And we don't do enough of that in this world. We get too focused on all the little different things and noises and all of that. And that's the beautiful thing about storytelling and film is like we're there, we're in there, we're present. And I think that's, the biggest takeaway from our conversation is just be present, be the best version of you and go at it every day, and things will take care of themselves how they do. And it's just that's one of the biggest things I love about storytelling is just being able to connect with that. So in closing, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's beautiful. I think, it's the same thing when you go to see a live concert or you go to see a play. It's that shared experience and everything gets heightened when you get to do it with other people, right? But all of that is storytelling. And that's really honestly the thing that brings us all together. And I think a good movie allows the audience to see a viewpoint or see a different world, right? That's outside of their own world. And you can escape through it. You can learn from it. You can walk away feeling better about life. You can feel more uplifted. I think that's what movies and art should do, honestly, and I think it's interesting because when all that shut down during COVID, it was such a loss for so many people because that shared experience, right, of being human beings and listening to a great story and being transported and then walking out and feeling like, oh man, maybe I could do that. Or life's not as bad as I thought it was, right? Or you just feel happy about something, you just laugh. We have to keep that going because, it brings us closer together. But it's also like the idea of community. We have to go out more. We have to go to the local bar more. We have to talk to each other more because we have a lot more in common than the opposite. We have a lot in common, and we find that out by communicating to each other and then creating great pieces of art which link, ourselves to each other. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great reminder. We have a lot more in common than different. And in this world, it always feels like everybody's different. We're all different, just like everybody else. So, love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this wonderful work you do?
You can find me all over social media. My name, Instagram, Facebook, and I actually answer my Instagram. I'm the person there, communicating. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And I'll definitely have all those links in the show notes. So, always good talking with you. Looking forward to the next conversation. You'll be three-peat. That's real rarefied air. So, good stuff. Thanks so much. Love talking to you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show. If you're dealing with a toxic workplace or feeling stuck in a challenging job, you don't have to go through it alone. Join our Dealing with Toxic Workplace community today at community.breakfastleadership.com and learn practical ways to protect your peace, rebuild confidence, and lead with strength. See you inside the community.